This is Special Chronicles, giving respect and a voice to people with special needs.
I shudder thinking how the world can be so cruel. I lend my voice to those who can't. It's time we try, it's time we care, it's time we stand. It starts with a voice.
Welcome back to the Special Chronicles podcast. I'm your host and founder of Special Chronicles, Daniel Smikowski, and I'm so grateful to have you joining us for another conversation that celebrates the power of stories, the power of inclusion, and the lived experiences that shape us. At Special Chronicles, our mission is giving respect and voice to people with special needs through media, and today's episode embodies that mission beautifully. We're honored to welcome back to the podcast someone whose voice has been making a global impact across the Special Olympics movement. Athlete, advocate, mentor, and new author Ben Haack from Special Olympics Australia. Ben's new book, Reason for Hope, A Parent's Guide for Raising Hope and Resilient Kids, is a heartfelt collection of letters written from lived experience. It's a guide for parents, caregivers, teachers, coaches, and anyone supporting a child with autism or developmental differences. Ben brings honesty, clarity, and hard-won wisdom, not to fix kids, but to help them grow with confidence, belonging, and joy. In this episode, we will talk about resilience without erasing difference, the power of play and community, calmer family rhythms, and what it truly means to build a world where every child feels seen and supported. We'll also explore Ben's work with the Belonging Forum and his mission to help families feel less alone. You can access the full show notes, follow Special Chronicles on social media, subscribe to the podcast, and listen to more episodes on demand at specialchronicles.com/pod. That's specialchronicles.com/pod. Or if you're watching the video podcast on the YouTube, you can scan the QR code that is above the screen. There. You're also encouraged to subscribe to our newsletter to stay updated on new episodes and the latest updates. So let's dive in and put your virtual hands together as we welcome Ben back on the Special Chronicles podcast. Welcome back, Ben. Welcome back, Ben.
Hi, Daniel. How are you?
Good. It's good to have you back on. And I was trying to think of the first time that you were on, because you've been on the program a few times. I think it might have been 2012, 2013.
Yeah, I think it was 2013.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And then you've been on a couple of times in the past. I think one time with a friend, Kira Byland, and so it's good to have you back on. If I remember, I'll try to. If our listeners want to go back and listen to that first episode, you can go on specialchronicles.com/autism, I think it is, and do a search there. But yeah, it's good to have you on. I'm glad when I think Caitlin at SOI had reached out about your book, so I'm glad that we're able to have you back on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, it's great to be back on.
So, for listeners meeting you for the first time, can you introduce yourself? Because in the introduction, I said that you're an athlete, an advocate, and now an author. But because I'm sure we're going to have a lot of new, because this is now my getting up on my 18th year of podcasting. So we've got a lot of long-time listeners, but a lot of new listeners at the same time. So for any new listeners meeting you for the first time, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. my name is Ben Haack. I'm from Australia. I live on the Gold Coast in Australia. I've been involved in Special Olympics for about 26 years. My sports were football and cricket. I competed in those at every level, including the international level. I went to a couple of World Games in football, and I was lucky to represent Australia. I then stepped into athlete leadership about 17 years ago, and I've served in a variety of different capacities, both in Australia and internationally. And I've just recently, about a month ago, published my first book,
Awesome.
thanks to the help of a lady named Kim Samuel from the Belonging Forum. She helped me be able to get that published and to be able to get it edited and all of that.
Awesome. That's been a long time dream of mine as well, to write a book of my story. So hopefully within the next few years, I can accomplish the same dream. But you mentioned I'm Kim Samuel, and the first time that I think one of the first times that I met or I heard her speak was when we were in Berlin at the mutual friend Emily had put together the Global Forum for Inclusion, and I believe Kim was on a panel that I was in the room that I watched, and so that's where I first learned about the work that she's doing. But in reading the first few chapters of your book, I enjoyed that you shared a lot of your backstory of I'm growing up, so readers and parents can really hear firsthand and get a better understanding of your backstory. Take us back to what inspired you to, because you talked about how it's a collection of letters, but what inspired you to write Reason for Hope, and why do you feel that now, 2026, was the right time, was the right moment to share these letters with parents and caregivers?
Yeah, I wrote Reason for Hope simply because families, even today, who are raising people with disabilities, still deal with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of negativity about themselves and their child with a disability. They still deal with a narrative that tends to take away a lot of hope and a lot of sort of a mindset of, their child could achieve or do things or be of value to the community. So my book was about, yes, telling my story, but also using my story and my experiences and what I've learned to provide a guidebook to families trying to raise people like me. And each chapter is a letter, but each letter has a subject, and with it has parts of my story. It also has lessons to learn, also guidance. The thing about it is not coming from an academic background or like a doctor's background or a professional's background, which far too often parents deal with. It's from a lived experience. And why is it important at the moment? Well, I just feel that there's a lot of there's a lot of uncertainty in the world, regardless of whether you're raising a person with a disability or not, around family and community and that sort of stuff as well. So I think it's just important to try and continue to remind people of the importance of those things.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that, and I love that you're focusing on lived experience, because I think that's the best way that parents and caregivers can learn. In podcasting for as long as I've heard from many parents who have benefited from hearing from the lived experiences of myself, from yourself, and from so many athlete leaders in the movement, and so many self-advocates who are sharing their lived experience. So it's a really healing firsthand from parents and caregivers. The stories of our lived experiences can make a big difference in how they're able to help their son or daughter succeed. You've been a leader just like myself, in the Special Olympics movement for many years. How has that experience in the Special Olympics movement shaped your perspective on belonging, on resilience, and on human potential?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, like when I got diagnosed when I was 17 with autism, my family didn't really have much available. So, my mum went on a journey and she found Special Olympics. She also found another organisation called Gold Coast Recreation and Sport. And through that, I found, I literally found belonging. I literally found a community. I literally found a place where I belonged. I found my passion through sport. So the initial part was really about me, and my family, and really about me finding that place to belong, and finding that place to feel included and to have that situation. And then once I progressed to a certain competence, that's when I could look at becoming an advocate or a leader, not just for myself but others. And through that, I've done significant work both here and internationally, and I have travelled the world. I have served on the board of directors for SOI for 9 years with people like Tim Shriver and Bart Connor and Maria Shriver, Nadia Comaneci, and quite a few other famous people. But more important, well, I guess importantly, I was able to lead, be an advocate for others, and also able to create meaningful change. But again, that would, if I hadn't had that situation happen for me, my way of paying that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so powerful, and I think so many people share that same perspective on this movement. Moving into your book, Reason for Hope. Your book, as you've mentioned, is written as a series of personal letters. Why did you feel that format of a series of letters felt right for the message that you wanted to share?
It's a variety of things. It provides a personal touch to that family. So in essence, it's basically me writing to a family about people like myself. So it provides that. I think it also then gives me a particular subject to be able to discuss that with as well. I think it also takes away any sort of notion of it being too academic. I think also it comes across as more friendly as well, and more approachable, and also doesn't come across as, well, the intent is to not come across as knows it all. It's just a series of is giving advice and guidance from someone who's had lived, someone who knows everything about this particular subject.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. And in preparing for our podcast today, and in reading some of the book, I felt that too, that it really did have that personal touch, like almost as if you were sitting across the table from a parent or a caregiver, like that conversation type of is that also how you envision the book when the reader was reading, as if they were sitting, because like you we obviously can't sit across the table from every person who reads the book, but is that kind of also kind of how you envision like the format of this to be, as if you were sitting across the table and sitting with parents or caregivers?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, just trying to be personal, humble, friendly, designed in language that people can understand it, not too academic
Yeah.
or too over the top.
Awesome.
Just a book that provides guidance and a bit of a framework.
Yeah. Awesome. There was a colleague that I work with at United Airlines who has a son with autism, a young son who actually has the same name has the same name that I have, but she's a big advocate for the hearing disability sunflower lanyard that a lot of us wear when you travel. But I'm gonna when we get done with this podcast, I'm gonna share with her about your book and the I'm gonna share with her the link of where she can get your book, because I'm sure she will benefit from the book with her young son. You described the book as a playbook, which is in the subtitle of the book. And in describing the book as a playbook for raising happy and resilient kids, what does resilience mean to you, especially trying to erase difference? I remember during my time as a Southern Tribal Global Messenger, one of the Leadership Academy sessions what was on this similar topic. But what does, in as you describe the book as a playbook for raising happy and resilient kids, what does resilience mean to you, especially without trying to erase difference?
I think I think the key to message to the book about resilience is being persistent and understanding that sometimes just showing up is enough. I know one of the things I talk about in the book is the concept of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and what that means is there's going to be ups and downs, going to be challenges. I know I'm trying to make that very clear to parents, and then I talk about quite a few of my own challenges as well. Uh, I I think that's very important for families to be aware of, that there's going to be ups and downs, there's going to be setbacks. Resilience is just trying to push through that, and it's also about trying to be realistic as well, being realistic about where things are at the moment and trying not to push something too big. I think it's also about celebrating the small victories as well along the journey as you go along. But yeah, as I said, it's just about, sometimes it's just about showing up. It's not necessarily about hitting it out of the ballpark every time, because that's a reality that won't happen. And again, it's trying to also reassure families that just because undeniably there'll be other people or other experts saying your child is falling behind, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are either, because again, it's about their journey and where they are, so much other stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. And that experience of showing the realistic part of your story, or showing your being realistic and celebrating those small victories goes a long way, because I think that's a big part of how we're able to relate to each other as humans. And that's when we're realistic, and when just like what you've done in your book of how you're realistic in showing your story. I think that's how these families, and really anyone who reads this book can really learn a lot from. And I know you gearing the book towards parents and caregivers and families, but I'm sure even employers or people from companies, or even friends or teachers or schools can probably also learn from this book of how to, whether it's a supervisor or manager at a workplace, can read this and learn how to best interact with a coworker with autism, or a teacher. Is that can you, even though the book is written for parents and caregivers and families, can other, whether it's workplaces or schools, and can other people also benefit from your book?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think anybody engaging with somebody with a disability can certainly gain some insight from it. I think anybody with a disability could gain some insight from it, and I think I think just families in general could gain some value from my book.
Awesome. So when this podcast comes out, I'll definitely share it with all. I mean, all. We have a wide range of listeners and viewers to the program that will, I'm sure will benefit and get a lot of value from your book. Many parents, as I'm sure your parents and many parents feel overwhelmed or alone after getting an autism diagnosis. I know you in one of the early chapters. I'm not sure which chapter it was, but one of the early chapters you wrote about your father being in tears, and I know with my developmental disabilities that there was times that even my own father or my own parents were in tears as well. So as you write, and as many parents feel overwhelmed and alone after getting an autism diagnosis, what do you hope that they feel after reading your book?
What I hope that they feel is a sense of hope. That's why I wrote Reason for Hope. I hope they feel that, okay, this journey may be different to what I was perceiving it was going to be, but it's still a journey that has value, has worth in it. I hope it balances up the equation, because as I said, like even today, like diagnosis or any of those sort of things is usually always comes along with a very terrible narrative. That's usually all negative. I'm hoping this rebalances that. Also, I hope it gives them some tools, some guidance, and some inspiration to go down the journey. That's kind of what I'm hoping. Which, funny enough, in essence, should be the way it is, because let's face it, families raising neurotypical kids, like, let's face it, there's no guarantee that's going to be perfect and wonderful and everything's going to go, absolutely wonderful either. So it's really just about trying to rebalance that.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure even parents and families who don't have children with autism or developmental disabilities, but might have neighbors or friends, can probably also learn from this book and I'm sure probably in a way all families can probably learn from your book as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's some universal messages in the book that would work for all families out there trying to build up their children to be decent and honourable and strong, and to teach them community and all of that. I think, yep, absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, because I'm sure that, like, especially if young, like my sister has 3 kids, currently 4, 3, and 10 months old. So like I'm sure even if young parents read this book and start to introduce to the young kids about compassion and kids who are different, then maybe that might also, like, once they read your book, then they might get their kids involved in unified sports or the unified schools or those types of programs that Special Olympics offers. Do you also feel like whether it's the traditional sports or the unified sports that families will be able to get their kids involved in Special Olympics?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do hope that they can. That's one of the key messages they take out of the book. That Special Olympics is a great organisation for them to get involved in, not only for their child but themselves as well, and they hopefully they they do that sort of pathway.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Because just like yourself, I've developed so much, not just in sports, but in communication because of getting involved in this organization, getting involved in this movement. You write about not forcing normal. What does that look like in everyday family life?
So, what that means is a few things. One is that you've got to respect your child's journey and who they are, not what you were necessarily. How can I say it? Not that you were necessarily wanting, or you. In other words, you got to move past the hopes and dreams stuff that a lot of parents have, and you got to get down to where your child is at and who they are. So that's probably one of the biggest reasons why I say don't force normal, because quite a lot of families can make that mistake. Also, but it's important to not try and force normal, because then you could seek therapies or supports that aren't necessarily going to work for your child. And if you really are about forcing normal, you might continue to use those therapies or supports or programs that aren't working for you. You will continue. You have this perception of what the child should be versus who they could be. I also think it's important to not try and force that, because again, the family might develop a negative perception of their child because hang on, they're regressing, or they're not acting in a typical fashion. So it's about trying to remove a lot of those sort of things, and it's about loving and accepting your child. And yes, absolutely, it's about trying to teach them things, to encourage them to be physically active and to play sport and to engage with their family and their community. But it's also about embracing their differences and helping them to be, and also helping them to be able to function in the world whilst also embracing those differences.
Awesome. I love that, and it's really neat that and really powerful that you're focusing on not focusing on the normal, and respecting each child's journey, because just like whether it's somebody with autism or any developmental disabilities, every child's journey, your journey, my journey, the everyone's journey is different. We might have some similarities, but I really find a lot of value in how you wrote about their family should respect their child's journey, because I'm sure your parents respected your journey. My parents respected my journey. Let's and so it's really powerful to for as you talked about moving past the hopes and dreams, and that not necessarily seeking therapy. Let's now move into the few themes that you wrote in the book about strengths, about confidence, and about growth. One of the themes in your book is helping kids discover what they're good at. What helped share a little bit with the listeners, with our viewers, on what helped you discover your strengths growing up?
Yeah, what helped me to find my strengths was the environment that I had. Like when I was a kid, I was a chronic stutterer, and yes, my mum did find a speech therapist. So again, that's like it was a good example of therapy. But she was also the one who really helped me to overcome that. She spent a lot of time working on me, to overcome that. I had walking problems. I used to walk on toes. So my mum found a pair of shoes that helped me to focus more on being on my heel, and would spend a lot of time getting me to walk around, work on heel toe. She also helped me with my reading and writing and my maths. She did spend a lot of time with that. So through that environment, I was always being taught resilience and strength. I was always being taught to work hard. We were always celebrating small victories. So that kind of built the foundation. And then I started to find sport funny enough before Special Olympics because my mum, she was worried about me and my brother being on the video games too much. So she basically kicked us off the video game, and I went and started sport. But again, when I did, I had a supporting environment, family, and that sort of stuff. And really, a lot of those foundational lessons that started when I was very young just continued to blossom slowly but surely. In at home. I mean, there were challenges up until Special Olympics and Gold Coast Recreation and Sport away from home, but at home, they were positive and strong. And those things help to overcome. And when I say strengths, like what I mean by that is not necessarily even a traditional viewpoint on strengths. What I mean, trying to see, as best as you can, what your child's unique ability and strengths are, and to try to encourage them to use those strengths or those skills or abilities. I mean, it's one of the things I wish would happen so much more in schools would be that teachers would or schools would be encouraged to do the same thing rather than just forcing people to do a whole lot of other stuff. It'd be nice for them to be able to pursue their unique strengths as well. And as I'm sure you've seen, I certainly know I've seen, there are a lot of unique strengths for people with disabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like you, I've had stuttering and language difficulties growing up. Even in my very younger years, I will braces on my legs, and also difficulty reading and writing and processing some of the same issues. But what I loved of what you just shared and focus on in the themes of your book is how you focused on the strength, because that's a lot of what my dad has always taught me as to, and even my dad often talks about, having that we have strengths and we have weaknesses, and really focusing on the strengths. So that encouragement from for my parents to really focus on the strengths is really important. So having that, your book will absolutely help so many parents to focus on that of what your parents helped you to focus on your strength and focus on your confidence. My parents have done the same thing. How can parents and teachers shift from focusing on defects or difficulties to building a confidence and capability?
Well, again, learning's not a perfect process. It's an up and down process. So that when you're engaging with a person and you're trying to educate them, it's not just going to happen in a flat line. There's going to be ups and downs. I also think I in a way kind of still blame the training or the knowledge base that teachers and caregivers come from when it comes to this sort of problem, that too often the training or the knowledge they're getting is coming from experts or academic people, and a lot of that framework is not very fundamentally positive. It is always about deficits, not about strengths. I think also, again, referencing my mother, it's just about being persistent with the person, but also being curious, about the person and how they engage with things. I think it's always about trying to find the positives within someone. Because bottom line, that's the stuff that you can work with that can really make a difference. So I just think teachers fundamentally need to play. I mean, if you want to talk about unified champion school, they need to play more unified sport, become a coach or a volunteer, and just spend some time with people with disabilities and see, who they really are and what really goes on, and how to work with them. I think is the best remedy to these sort of problems, not the other sort of stuff, because as I said, too often it comes from the wrong sort of source or the wrong sort of perspective.
Absolutely, yeah. I love that you focused on that, and I think a big part of what you just shared about how a lot of the blame and a lot of the difficulties comes from the academic people. And if just like how you're gearing this book towards parents and families, but also at the same time, if teachers and academic people can read your book, then they can learn how to find the positive people. And even once they read your book, then these academic people can then, after they read your book, then that they can build upon that to get involved in unified champion schools, can get involved in becoming a volunteer or coach in Special Olympics. And so it's really, there's a lot of connection that your book has a very, not just because of your connection with Special Olympics, but your book can directly impact academic people and families to get involved in unified champion schools, can get involved in this movement to really change that perspective where in the future, in 5, 10, 20 years from now, instead of the academic people not knowing how to work with people with autism, how to work with people with developmental differences, that it will have a positive impact. Do you hope that in 5, 10, 20 years that if academic people read your book and then get involved in Unified Champion Schools and get involved as a volunteer or coach in Special Olympics, that it will change that shift, it will change that perspective?
Oh, absolutely. And again, I think that's the missing sort of area for them is the person side, is the human side. Not so much the diagnosis, not so much the medical, not so much the individual education plan, not so much the curriculum. It's the understanding people aspect and being able to have those tools and skills to be able to do that. And I would really hope that does take off, because again, I think as you and I have seen, the difference it makes when you do it the other way, both for us and for the community in general, is really significant. So I think it's a very important thing.
Awesome. And I'm sure Caitlin and the Unified Champions Schools team, I'm sure will be sharing your book with many academic people to help with that. Perfect transition to talking about the world of sport and the world of Special Olympics, which you has absolutely shaped a part of your story. What role did sport, and in particular, what role has Special Olympics played in helping you grow into your strengths?
It's done a lot. As I said at the beginning, a lot of it was belonging. At the beginning, a lot of it was just a sense of, finally I'm in a place where I belong. That was one. The second of all, I think the role of sport, it taught me how to focus. It taught me discipline. It taught me how to engage in a team. It taught me how to be competitive in the right way. It taught me how to have goals and to achieve. And then from there on in terms of my leadership journey, well, through that I've learned how to develop some really good professional skills in terms of being able to develop presentations, being able to give presentations, being able to sit on the board and be an effective voice, and to be able to understand, board and legal documents, and also to be able to sit on a committee, and also to be able to work as well, like work in Special Olympics or work as a local program leader. So it's given me a huge amount.
Awesome. I love that, and that I'm sure that will also give hope. I'm sure that will also give a lot of hope to these families, that whether that if they get their young kids involved in Special Olympics, that it, because I'm sure when people are first introduced to Special Olympics, they first think that they will only develop like sports on the field and sport and sport skills, but in hearing in reading your story, families can really learn that there's much more that this movement can offer us. Building building upon sports into athlete leadership and professional skills, like you just talked about. Let's now dive into a few themes of belonging, community, and connection. Obviously, with Kim Samuel and the Belonging Forum, that you've worked closely with the belonging Forum. How does the idea of belonging, and it might be obvious for people, but it might not be. So in working closely with the Belonging Forum, how does the idea of belonging show up in your book?
So, well, it's written into all of it in some. Well, not all of it, but a lot of it. As I said, first of all, it's written with into the story about my family and I, and how supportive they've been, with a particular focus on my mother. It's talked quite heavily about Special Olympics and how Special Olympics helped me to have belonging. Talks about Gold Coast recreational sport and all of that, and it's talked about how I've been able to find a community through those various mechanisms.
Awesome. I love that. Speaking on this theme, on this idea of belonging, what does true belonging look like for kids with autism or other developmental differences?
I think true belonging is having a community around you that understands you or supports you. I think it's also having a place to belong, but I think it's also about having a family that supports you to go on a journey to be as independent as you can, to have as much self-reliance as you can. It's about having the tools to be able to explore and to think and to develop. I also think, fundamentally, it's about all the various tools and mechanisms that people need to feel that they belong in their community, that they have a voice, that their voice is valued, and that they have an opportunity to achieve and to contribute back. And I think that it's important that families really try to encourage and develop that for their child by teaching them good lessons about life and encouraging them to be resilient and strong. And also it's about understanding that not everything's going to be perfect. There's going to be ups and downs, but it's just about trying to break through those.
Awesome. I love that. And we've talked a little bit about schools and coaches when it comes to Special Olympics, and how can Cheryl, as we wrap up this idea of belonging and connection and community, how can share with our listeners and viewers, how can communities, schools, coaches, extended family help to create environments where kids feel seen, where kids feel valued?
It's about doing more than just having a fun. It's about more than just training. It's about more than just funding. It's about more than just a statement or a slogan or a series of words on a wall. It's about developing a culture where that stuff is put into practice daily. I think that's what it really is about, and ultimately that comes down to individual people trying to take responsibility for their own actions to try and create a better community. I think that's the fundamental key. to create belonging. And I think it's also, as I'm trying to describe in the book, and that's why, I keep referencing to 2 steps forward, 1 step back, is that it's not going to be an up and down it's not going to be a straightforward process. It's going to be up and down, but it's about trying to work through that. And it's about, as a teacher, trying to, in your best way, to try and level with your students and to try and understand who they are and where they're coming from, and to use their strengths or support their strengths, and encouraging them as much as you can in the right way. So I think it's a lot of those sort of more interpersonal type skills, rather than the traditional sort of notion of inclusion, which is, we have a we have a pledge, or we've now signed an agreement, or we've come up with a new program. It's about those interpersonal sort of skills.
Absolutely, yeah. I love that you're focusing on going beyond, really beyond inclusion, because we've got the pledge that people sign for the inclusion revolution. I know when we were in Berlin at the Global Forum for Inclusion, there was that proclamation that everybody signed, and I'm glad that you're focusing going beyond just signing a pledge for inclusion, but really, that it's good to have that, but when you're focusing on going beyond that, that's how families and that's how teachers can have a really big old impact, and a really a lasting impact on taking inclusion to a whole new level. Moving right into some themes of family life with teens and well-being, you talk about calmer family rhythms, and I think in one of the early chapters of your book, you talked about growing up on a farm on the Gold Coast of Australia. You in talking about calmer family rhythms and screen boundaries, and which not playing a lot of video games, and spending time in nature. Why are these so important for kids and parents alike?
Oh, these days probably even more important than it was for me when I was growing up, because let's face it, everything is technology these days. It's pretty much a daily sort of essential thing. And the reason why it's important for families raising people with disabilities, particularly autism, is because of the reality that people on the spectrum can become addicted to them, and they can be very dangerous with all the dangerous type stuff that's on there. But also, it's not good for people's health or their mindset. It's not good for their well-being or their perception of how things are. So I think it's important for people to, if they can, to find ways to spend time outside, maybe going for a walk or engaging in a physical activity. Again, we can talk about sport. That's one of the beauties of what sport does. Yeah, I've lived on a farm, so 20-acre farm. So I guess I had that natural advantage that I can go outside, play sport, and be out in nature, and that desensitized me. It also seemed to calm me down. It also, allowed me to pursue, a big passion of mine, which was sport, and it also just gave me a sense of level-headedness that things are okay and all of that sort of stuff, which I think is really, again, I think it's really important, particularly for families raising kids with disabilities, particularly autism, to try and try and encourage them to pursue other things, not just being on technology.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And even sitting here in the studio, I've got my phone, iPad, and computer. And like I've got like 3 different devices on, but I mean that's part of doing this work. You sometimes need to, but at the same at the same time, being able to like, especially like using the technology like you have, and like I have, like a watch that can remind you to stand up, that can remind you of how many steps and miles that you are walking, and I think that also using it as a tool to get outside in nature, and using it as a tool to get outside to walk is I think, and I'm sure that let me know if you agree, but is a much better use of the technology to use it as a tool, and not being in front of it for all day. Is that do you agree?
Yeah, 100. Yeah, 100%. I think it can be used for positives. There's no question about that. It can certainly be used to help you to achieve those things as well. Again, it's just about trying to find that right balance. And as I said, in today's world, you really can't avoid technology, but it's also just about having that right balance so it doesn't affect you or your child in a bad way.
Absolutely. You give a lot of advice in your book for parents. What advice do you have for parents who feel stretched so thin, or because I'm sure that there's a lot of parents that might have 1 or 2 or 3 jobs, and or might have a few kids and have to like for my own sister who has 3 kids, and they've got a lot of, even though the kids are full and under dance class and soccer, gymnastics, or all different activities. What advice do you have for parents who feel stretched so thin or unsure how to support their child's emotional needs?
Again, as you read in my book, there are communities out there that you can seek out to help you and your child in terms of those sort of things. I think one of the beauties, and again, I know I said earlier about technology, but one of the positives of technology is that you can go online and have a look. You could certainly, as an example, look up and find a local Special Olympics program, and you can go there. That could be a great place for you and your child to gain, some good sort of emotional sort of strength and needs. But there are also other groups out there, autism groups or autism social groups, or disability programs, or So I just think that's an important thing. I think also you've got to also support yourself as a parent, and I think you've also got to recognise that this situation won't. It is a journey. It will take time. It won't happen overnight. I think it is important to protect yourself as a parent as well if you're facing burnout or stress. So again, I think there's a few things that people can do. I think community and reaching out and finding a community, and that can be a parent group as well, that's known as Special Olympics, or a group for your child, but also trying to take care of yourself as well.
Absolutely, and I know in Special Olympics, in addition to athlete leadership, we've got the families program. That those a whole, I believe, a whole council, a whole department that helps families to be able to help each other. And if our listeners want, I'll try to put in the show notes. If you're watching the video podcast, you see it on the screen. If you want to find your local Special Olympics program, specialolympics.org, and you can, no matter whatever country or wherever you are located, find your local program to get involved. What are some small practical changes families can make that can have a really big impact?
Small impactful changes. I think the key thing is to always make sure that you're supporting each other. I think that's a really important thing. I think also, I think the biggest key thing also is trying to find and look at positives that are going on, and to celebrate those positives, even if they're small. It doesn't really matter. I think also trying to find a community for yourselves, for you and your child, I think is an important thing. So again, I think, I think it's really important for families to try and find that as much as they can, but also try and have as much resilience as you possibly can as well. And again, try and work with your child's strengths, your child's abilities. And again, it's not a straightforward process like that. They have a saying that you have to break a few eggs to make an omelette. So those things are going to happen. So it's just about trying to keep a balanced perspective on those. So yeah, those are the things that can make a difference.
Awesome, absolutely. We've got a few final segments here as we move into lived experiences and how-won wisdom. You describe the book as how-won wisdom. What are some of the toughest lessons that you have learned on your journey?
There's a whole bunch. I started playing mainstream cricket when I was a teenager, and I had a coach who was he was very, very horrible to me, and he wouldn't let me really play at all. He wouldn't even let me practice batting or my bowling. So that was pretty much for the vast majority of the 2 years I was with that team. And so that was tough. It was really, really hard. But my parents kind of encouraged me to keep persisting, to keep training, to keep working, just because they wanted me to develop resilience and toughness. Also, probably back then there probably wasn't a whole lot of other options either, but that was one of the things they wanted me to do. So I did. I went about, really training hard, doing a lot of batting and bowling, really working on my fielding. And I really worked hard on trying to make myself as presentable as I could to that coach. And I ended up starting to get opportunities in games and in training. So that was a really, really tough series of lessons that I had in my life. But funnily enough, I look back at that and realise that it did me a whole lot of good, because it taught me a whole lot of resilience and courage and toughness, and how to deal when things are bad, and to keep showing up and not giving up on something, which was really good.
Awesome. And I'm sure our listeners have learned a lot of from your story in this book, of your understanding of autism. share with our listeners, share with our viewers, how has your understanding of autism and of yourself evolved over time from your years growing up on a farm on the Gold Coast of Australia to today being a professional speaker and now author, and how has your understanding of autism and of yourself evolved over time?
Until the age of 17, I didn't know what autism was. And then when I got diagnosed, I went through several stages of sort of doubt and sort of fear and a bit of rejection on it because I didn't really understand what it is. And once I joined Special Olympics and Gold Coast Recreation and Sport and got involved in their various programs and met other people on the spectrum and all that, I started to learn. And then when I, went overseas and did lots of work and still do lots of work as an ambassador and a speaker and an author with Special Olympics, I learned even more. What I've essentially learned about autism is it's people, it's a spectrum, so it's a really wide spectrum with a really wide range of ability. So you can have somebody like me who's high functioning, and then you can have someone that's not high functioning who is non-verbal and lacks a lot of that sort of capacity. But in essence, it's people who, according to the way our society views things, don't think, perceive, or see the world in a typical way. So they think, perceive, see the world in very different ways, and that can present in a variety of different ways. It can present in how we socially engage. It can present in our body language. We may not understand, the typically socially appropriate way to have body language. May not look people in the eye. May not pick up jokes or innuendos in the same way. May have struggles with or challenges with our speech or our ability to handle our environment. Might have what they call hypersensitivity, so want to be very sensitive to sounds or noises in our environment as well, and that can play out in both ways. That can become intimidating, but it also becomes something we really enjoy. So yeah, that's pretty much what I've learned about it. I personally, though, working in disability and all that, I'm very much about the understanding the person side, because, and that's the other thing I want to make clear, like what I was describing there are the frameworks, but within that you get the person, and it's how it specifically impacts that person. But as I said, it's a diagnosis or an identity for people who society tends to view doesn't perceive or see the world or engage the world in what we view as a typical way, which, as I said, isn't a bad thing, but there is still, unfortunately, that narrative.
Awesome. I love that, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners can relate to that as well. Speaking directly to a parent or a newly diagnosed child, what do you wish that every parent and of a newly diagnosed child could hear someone with lived experience, both from hearing you today on Special Chronicles, on the program today, as well as hearing directly from you in your book? What do you wish that every parent of a newly diagnosed child could hear?
I think hearing that person's story, and hearing how they developed and how they became a functioning member of society, and how they've gone about, doing the things they have, and having the achievements they've had, and just how those things happen. I think as much as anything would be really beneficial for the parents. And I think also just them also understanding that that person probably found a community or had family or both that helped them as well. So what that will do is give them hope and some real sense of encouragement, that okay, things can be positive, and that hope there.
Awesome, awesome. Let's now dive into some ideas of advocacy, of inclusion, and the bigger picture. You've spent years helping to shift how communities think about disability and human potential. What changes give you hope today? Because you've seen a lot in your years from growing up as a child till today. What changes give you hope? Because you talk about it, obviously in this book, it's titled "Reason for Hope." And so, what changes give you hope today?
There's a lot more. There's a lot more conversation and a lot more of a focus on including people with disabilities these days. I mean, days there ad campaign for people with disabilities. These days, a lot of governments are now trying to develop disability support systems, and there's a lot of talk about accessibility. I mean, everywhere. There's a lot of positive examples of people with disabilities doing well. There's quite a lot of funding and support for people with disabilities as well. So there's a lot more things out there today. It's not as hidden as it used to be. It's discussed a lot more than what it used to be. And yeah, so I think there's a lot of hope out there for things to continue to get better.
Awesome. I love that. And your book will definitely add to that in such a big and really will add to that in such a powerful way. I'm sure there's still misconceptions about autism or disability in society today. So what misconceptions about autism or disability do you still see most often?
I mean, look at how people perceive people with disabilities in sport. I mean, how often do they see it as either we're not capable of playing sport, or we're not really playing sport, we're just doing something fun and sweet and joyful and inspirational and all of that. I mean, there's always been sort of misconceptions with Special Olympics, right? About we're all smiling, and we don't care if we win or lose, and we're all going to hug each other, and there's always been that perception. And again, like, with people on the spectrum, there's always been a negative perception of people on the spectrum, that there's somebody to be, scared of or afraid of, or somebody that's going to be weird or socially awkward, or again, a lot of stereotypes. They're always the ones playing Dungeons and Dragons, and they're always the ones, obsessing over video games, and I mean, there's a term that they use in this space called inspiration porn. And again, I think a lot of that is just due to what I said, that unfortunately, inspiration And when we say inspirational, at times we're saying it not in a genuinely meaningful way. We're saying it in a way that, oh, well, that made my day feel better, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're respecting the person. So again, the biggest issue fundamentally, if you boil it down, is that we still don't see the individual. We see a label, we see a brand, we see a perception, we see a stereotype. We don't really get to the point of seeing a person, and we don't always necessarily see the true value. I mean, as I said, Special Olympics still faces that problem today, that people don't see it as real sport, or people competing, or people like you and I,
Yeah.
you know, that we're always happy and everything's always wonderful. And again, that's just not the reality of what goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, and I have to be careful how I say this, but so one of my employer had I couldn't go to this event because I was speaking at a conference, but my employer had a soccer tournament for football tournament for employees that and they invited, so my particular employer hires Special Olympics athletes to work, and they invited my team to come and be part of in a leadership role and to assist, which is good, but their first initial thought was for that and not having us actually play the sport. And it seems like a kind of I know a lot, like in this movement, in this movement of Special Olympics, we talk a lot about sport and athlete leadership, but it seems like it was good that they thought of us in a leadership role to assist at the event, but the fact that they disregarded the fact that we're athletes and that we could play with our coworkers who don't have disabilities was a little bit of a miss thought on that. I don't know if you have any comments on that, and I'm trying not to say the employer just because I still want to have a job, but I don't know if you had any thoughts on that. If not, we can move on. But
yeah, I mean, yeah, like as I said, it's all about stereotypes or misconceptions of what is going on and who that person is.
mm-hmm.
Is one of the biggest problems.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked a lot about giving support for parents and caregivers, and as just like your parents and my parents have become really big advocates for us. How speak directly to our listeners and viewers of how can parents and caregivers become advocates, not just for the child, but for a more inclusive world?
Oh, yeah. There's a variety of things that you can do. My only advice would be to start with your family, your child first. Because again, that's a big theme in my book is that my mother and my father and my family were very much about me first. So I think that's important, and we're about what would work for me as well. So I think if you can build a foundation on that sort of stuff, then after that, I think you can definitely explore becoming an advocate. I mean, there's a variety of ways you can do it. I mean, in Special Olympics, you can become a volunteer leader, you can become a staff member. You could certainly, if your child's in school, you can certainly, get on the parent and teacher council, talk to fellow parents and maybe start a group for people with disabilities. I mean, you could start your own outside group for people with disabilities as well. You could, talk to government or advocate for us at the government level. I mean, you could even, develop your own podcast about it as well, or a book. So yeah, there's a variety of different things, but I think it's important to just try and make sure you're about your child to begin with and about their journey, not just about trying to change everything else at the beginning, because otherwise you might not have developed the right necessary lens to be able to do that if you don't go and understand your child and really try and make things work for them first.
Awesome. I was trying to pull up your book here, but as we move into the finals, the final concluding segments here, and talk about the book's impact. Timothy, our mutual friend, Timothy Shriver, chairman of Special Olympics International, as well as Kim Samuel from the Belonging Forum, both wrote powerful endorsements for your book. What does both of their support mean to you?
I mean, personally, Kim Samuel, if I hadn't had her support, the book wouldn't have been able to be published. She helped me in regard to getting it published. She helped me by finding me an editor to help me in regard to editing the book. She's even helped me with media in Australia by hiring a media lady. So she's, her mention in the book is tremendous, both for who she is, because she's very much about belonging, but also because of what she did to support it. Kim Shriver is a really big one because he's a close friend of mine, and he's also very connected to the Special Olympic movement. So I think it's really good that he wrote a testimonial about my book, just for those reasons. And yeah, it was really good to have that, because it then offers legitimacy to the book, but also it's thanks Kim Samuels, and also support Special Olympics as well.
Awesome. And since your book has been published this year, I'm sure you've pulled from parents and readers alike. What has been the most meaningful reaction that you've received from a parent or a reader so far?
The most meaningful reaction so far has been that they found it really helpful in learning. They essentially saw a lot of lessons and examples in that book that they could relate to in their journey in raising their child, that they found to be very helpful and beneficial. They see the book as a bit of a guidebook or a lesson guidebook. They said that it hits the right marks in terms of being touching and personal, but also having depth and detail, but also in a way that's easy to understand. And they said it really kind of gave them a sense of hope and a sense of belonging for their child. And the reason why that was really good to hear is because that was the intention of why I wrote the book.
Awesome. I love that. And drawing upon that sense of hope and belonging and easy to understand and a lesson, a guidebook, if there's a school or a library or a parent group that is listening today, or maybe one of our listeners or viewers knows of a school or a library or a parent group that is interested in bringing you in for a talk, a big part of our audience is here in the States, is here in the United States, but I'm sure that you'll be willing to give a talk anywhere. What do you hope that they walk away with? What do you hope that they, and maybe it's obvious from our past hour and 30-minute conversation today, but what do you hope that they walk away with?
I hope they walk away with, first of all, a sense of hope for raising somebody like me, but also a book that they can then rely on to give them guidance and tools and support to be able to actualize those things, make those things happen. I hope it gives them a real clear direction and a real sense of, what can happen and where things are. I hope it takes away a lot of the disability perception that things are going to they're just going to be bad, which is not the case. Like, I hope that takes that away, and I hope in a way it almost kind of quantifies the situation that they're pretty much raising any other sort of kid almost, and that the journey might be a bit different to raising a neurotypical kid, but it doesn't mean it's a journey that doesn't have value.
Awesome. Now, as we come to a close, it's been such a joy and a lot of fun speaking with you for over an hour and a half now. That's just the impact that I know our listeners and our viewers will gain from the podcast today. But what's one message, if you were to kind of sum up this past hour and a half conversation, as well as your book, what's that one message of hope that you want families to carry with them after reading your book and after leaving, when they press stop on this, both when they press stop on this podcast episode, as well as they put down your book? What's that one message of hope that you want families to carry with them?
That your child has meaning and your child can succeed and can achieve, particularly in their own way, and that they do have strengths, and also that no journey, let alone this journey, is going to be, just happen in a straight line. There's going to be downs, but it's just about persisting and keep on moving forward.
Awesome. And we're going to put information in the show notes. So if you are watching the video podcast, right above Ben, or maybe I don't know how it looks on the viewers side of it, but right above us, you see that QR code. You can scan that QR code to find a link to the show notes for this episode. Or just look down in the description of the audio podcast, or on YouTube as well, and we'll put information on where our listeners can buy your book. But share with our listeners and viewers, where can they buy Reason for Hope and learn more about your work?
They can buy it on a platform called Kindle Direct Publishing, which is part of Amazon. So if you go into Kindle Direct Publishing and you type in Reason for Hope, a parent's playbook for raising happy and resilient kids, hard-won wisdom from my life on the spectrum, if you type that into Kindle Direct Publishing, along with my name, the book should appear. You can buy it either with Kindle or paperback.
Awesome. So I'll put that information up on the screen. I only put the first part of that, but hopefully if you all search for Reason for Hope and Ben Haack's name, you should be able to find it. And I will also try to put a link in the show notes for this episode, so you all can click through and purchase Ben's book. Highly recommend it for all of you listening in. How can you talked about in the previous segment about what you hope communities walk away with having you give a talk and come speak, but now directly speak to our listeners and viewers of how can communities invite you for talks, Q&A sessions, or group discussions?
Oh yeah, like I'm available for a variety of things. I mean, I could come into a school, an event for families raising people with disabilities, and I can talk about my book. I can talk about the key lessons from my book. Yeah, and I could be there to answer any questions that people have. Yeah, I can certainly go into schools and talk to teachers and caregivers about the same thing, basically, the key lessons of the book. I could have books there that are available to purchase or a QR code, and I could be happy to answer any questions. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. For families, I'd be happy to do that. For caregivers, I'd be happy to do that for schools, or anybody like that. Yeah,
awesome. So, in prepare for our time, I think I don't know if it was Caitlin or somebody had sent me a link to. I think it's on the Belonging Forum, but they sent me a link to information on how they can book you to speak. So I'll make sure to put that information in the show notes for this episode. And there was by the time our listeners hear this, it would have happened this past spring. But at the end of April, I spoke at a big disability convention, and I'll try to share your book and this podcast with them, because maybe they might be interested in having you as a keynote speaker. There was a big he has CP and he's in a wheelchair, but he's a television writer, and he won a travel show from Oprah. His name is Zach Anno. I don't know if you've heard of him, but this disability conference, I'll share your book with them because I think a lot of the families and self-advocates that attend this convention, that it usually happens in the springtime. I'm sure that they will really benefit from hearing from you. As we come to a close now, this is now I don't know, your second or third or fourth time. I don't know how many times you've been on.
I think it's three. It's three.
Okay, three. I'll meet your friend Tim Shriver. I think has only been on this podcast 2 times. So you have now you have now passed Tim with appearances on this podcast. So we'll have to let him know that you have now. You have now passed him. Do you have any, before we get to the final question, do you have any final thoughts on your overall time here today on the Special Chronicles podcast that you like to share with our listeners and viewers?
I just want to say that, it's been fantastic to be on this podcast to talk about my book. And I hope that anybody who buys my book gains a lot of benefit and insight from it.
Awesome. And we don't just want our listeners to of course we want our listeners to listen to this conversation, but even more than that, just like your book, we want to leave our listeners with a sense of hope and really a call to action to bring inclusion into their communities. And so this final question will help to give our listeners some action items on how to take from your story, take from your book, and bring meaningful inclusion into their families, into their communities, workplaces and schools. And so to introduce that final question, we've got a bumper. So let's go ahead and roll that bumper.
We're not just athletes.
We are the ambassadors of an uprising.
Peaceful protesters.
In a rebellion against anyone
who has a fear of difference.
Difference.
Our demands are
equality.
Dignity. And the recognition of our
shared humanity.
We will not stop
or accept anything less.
Today, our world is
more divided than ever.
And coming together has never been more urgent.
The revolution
is inclusion.
Find out more at jointherevolution.org.
So I'm sure you've probably heard that before, that PSA. But the inclusion revolution is a big part of the Special Olympics movement, and you talked a little earlier about going beyond just signing a pledge. I know in that bumper music we encourage our listeners to sign the inclusion pledge, but really, and you could even use some of what you shared before about going beyond just signing a pledge. But what does inclusion mean to you?
Inclusion, for me, it's just a foundation. It should be a foundational part of life for an individual, for their community, for their country, for anything, because it's just, it's the best way for people to live and feel belonging, to feel happiness, to be accepted, to be healthy, and also to be productive. And I think even today, dare I say it, too often the word inclusion is still seen as a side-on thing to someone's business or somebody's work, and it should be a foundational thing. Just because it's the best way to recruit people, it's the best way to develop people, it's the best way for people to engage. It's also the best way to have a viable brand, and it just helps people and their community. Awesome.
I love that. And thank you again. I know it's been more than an hour and 40 minutes that we've been talking, but thank you again, Ben, for taking the time to come on the Special Chronicles podcast. And anytime that you want to come back on, you're always welcome to. And I'm sure that this conversation today, and even more than that, your book will have such a powerful impact on our listeners and viewers. Yeah, thank you, Daniel. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us for this meaningful conversation with my friend Ben Haack. His honesty, his clarity, and lived experience remind us that hope isn't abstract. It's something we build through community, compassion, and the belief that every child deserves to grow with confidence and belonging. At Special Chronicles, our mission is giving respect and voice to people with special needs through media, and conversations like this help us continue amplifying stories that matter. If you'd like to bring Ben's message to your school, parent group, library, or community organization, he's available for talks and Q&A sessions, both virtual and in person. And you can pick up his new book, Reason for Hope, a parent's playbook for raising happy and resilient kids, on Amazon, or by visiting the Belonging Forum website. Again, as Ben mentioned at the end of our conversation today, If you go on to Kindle Direct Publishing, search for Reason for Hope, A Parent's Playbook for Raising Happy and Resilient Kids by Ben Haack. Or you can find it on the Belonging Forum website. The link, just scan that QR code above the video podcast here, or look in the description below for a link. Thank you again. And you can access the full show notes, follow Special Chronicles on social media, subscribe to the podcast, or listen to more episodes on demand at specialchronicles.com/pod. That's specialchronicles.com/pod. And don't forget to sign up for our newsletter so you never miss a new episode or update. And again, just scan that QR code if you're watching the video podcast for all the links to the program, or look in the description below. And until next time, I'm Daniel Smikowski, founder of the Special Chronicles and a former Sergeant Shriver Global Messenger with Special Olympics, reminding you to, as I'm sure Ben will join me in, reminding you to choose to include. We'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Special Chronicles podcast. Our podcast was produced by Daniel Smikowski on the Special Chronicles Network. Follow Special Chronicles on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Subscribe, rate, and review Special Chronicles on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Our website, specialchronicles.com, where you can stream our archives of over 500 episodes for absolutely for free. Also, there's a list of our favorites, original series, award-winning columns, and blogs. And sign up for our newsletter to receive exclusive bonus content delivered to your inbox. Again, specialchronicles.com. Special Chronicles is hosted by Podbean Podcast Hosting. Our live streams are powered by StreamYard. Thanks, as always, to our business manager, Adam Smikowski, who always encourages us to never give up. I'm Daniel Smikowski, back next week with more stories.
Special Chronicles, giving respect and a voice to people with special needs.